All right, everyone's heard enough of that little song. This man's time is way too valuable to put him through another 45 seconds of that crap. We got ourselves a very, very special guest. We're excited about this one. The king of the alpha plays, the spreadsheet virgin, the man who's never touched grass his entire life, the Julio Jones stan of this summer, the DFS king of the dome, the machine in the man versus machine, best balls definitive ADP market mover and ranks adjuster, the projection man himself, Mr. Michael Leone. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Very, very much not deserving of that intro, but I appreciate it nonetheless.
They ever tell you anything that nice over at ETR? Like, holy cow, that was...
That's not how the ETR Slack works.
But... Oh, there we go. Okay, Nez having a little trouble on his end with the fire alarm. That's all good. That's good. No, Mike, really appreciate you doing this with us. We've been kind of treading water through these BR process as they change the game format, as they build out different structures to the contest week over week, and just kind of we've been amending our own projections on the fly, porting over DFS. So now the fact that Establish the Run has incorporated that and started doing that, like, this has been phenomenal for us. And we really want to just pick your brain and talk through that process. And let's just start at the base, most primitive level. Like, what goes into the building of those models and the optimization for BR games on your end?
Yeah, so essentially we're taking the DFS projections that we're grinding, all week anyways, and figuring out a way to kind of automate that for battle royale rankings. And the big thing is really just finding the positional cutoffs, like where it makes sense. And it's sort of like a value above replacement player thing for every position. And that's how we're aligning stuff. And then each week I kind of have a default setup. And then, we're lucky to have Justin Herzig, who grinds this stuff and is really familiar. He'll kind of take a peek and be like, okay, the quarterbacks are too high this week, and we'll make an adjustment. But then the nice thing is from there, it's all automated. So when we're adjusting our, just the fantasy point projection, someone in and out, as we're adjusting that, it's like automatically flowing through to the battle royale rankings. There are definitely some wrinkles that we'll get into where you shouldn't be drafting, just straight off these rankings, but it's a really good base to sort of see that in line with the ADP to sort of prepare your strategy.
Yeah, I love that. Do you incorporate ADP and kind of adjust the ranks relative to how ADP is flowing, or are those two separate endeavors that you let the user kind of feel their own way through?
We do not incorporate the ADP right now. Something I was considering doing, but I feel like for this format, the ADP is probably not as efficient as it is for other formats, and I'm okay kind of just giving it as information. Whereas like our off-season best ball rankings for Underdog, Best Ball Mania, for example, we will incorporate the ADP. It's a little bit different game, and that's like, I don't remember the exact weight we put on it. It varies by the time of year and whatnot. But no, that is not affecting the player's ranking, other than we do kind of use it to help us with the positional cutoff so that we're not, too crazy. When we first set him up for this week, for example, I mean, we still have Tom Brady like way ahead of ADP, but we had him, we had the quarterbacks too high. So we're looking at the ADP to kind of adjust for that, so people aren't drafting suboptimally because they're so far away from the market.
If we talk about, you just said the word suboptimally, so it makes me think, talking about drafting optimally in these contests, like, would you be gravitating towards a set structure week over week, like a 1-1-3-1 build, or would you be looking to, randomize that flex exposure, change it based on a given week? What would your initial reaction be to that?
I think it's different for each week in each draft. I don't think you have to necessarily have the 1-1-3-1, which it does make sense from a ceiling perspective, where the wide receivers obviously give you a little bit more ceiling in the flex and the other positions, but you can get some pretty unique builds if you go double tight end on the correct week. And in general too, I think working backwards from the guys that aren't going to be drafted a lot, or working backwards from game stacks, makes some sense. And I know last week Herzig was telling me like, no one's drafting Josh Jacobs, who ended up hitting, of course, in a big way.
Well, that
and
was Nez's skeleton key because Nez took down the 10K and he was all over Jacobs there. So that paid
boom, let's
dividends
go,
right
Nez.
here.
I saw that. I saw
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Yeah. I know you're like the only other fellow Josh Jacobs, like not even believer, but just like respecter that I know of. So anytime like you're on here like touting Josh Jacobs, I'm like, pump some sanity, man. Just please, like he's not bad.
That's like the whole Josh
Obviously.
Jacobs thing. It's like I don't even like Josh Jacobs, but I'm like trying to be a little bit open-minded about it. That's it. That's
like please.
That's good.
Yeah.
AJ Dillon was another guy though. So like if you went hero running back and then you can get one of those guys, or maybe it's someone correlated in your game stack, I do think you probably generally want to start with the idea of 3 wide receivers, but it's not something that I suggest, pigeonholing yourself into every single draft.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to us too. Like we've kind of said it's been, I mean, it's cliche to say, but we've said it's been slate dependent. Well, one thing you touched on there was the notion of stacks and run backs. And, from playing DFS for so many years, we've kind of come to these, what we deem optimal in terms of run backs and stacks, and that given the contest size. How would you be approaching that as contests shift from like, we have a 50K entry one, we have a 2,000 person entry one, or about 2,500. And then we have a 300 that's a bit higher price point that would, in theory, play a little bit like the Dome, but it's multi-entry. What would you be doing in terms of correlation, stacks, runbacks in each of those kind of formats and structures?
Yeah, the way I've always looked at it is the smaller the field, the more important correlation is. I know sometimes I feel like people get that tripped up a little bit, but basically the larger the field size, the closer to perfect you have to be to win the contest. And then that's when you're just hitting like the 6-leg parlay, right? And at that point, the correlation matters a little bit less because, let's say you're double stacking Brady this week with Godwin and Evans. Like, they might be positively correlated at their 80th percentile outcomes, but if Godwin has the alpha game and Evans is just okay, you might lose in that really large field tournament. Whereas in the small field tournament, it's like, okay, all I have to do is get this game right, and it'll probably be a good enough score. It's not going to be the perfect score, but it'll be good enough.
You mentioned a word there, Leone, that I'd just like to harp on there. It started with an A, rhymes with Balfa. Did you happen to mention a certain type of play there that Chris Godwin may be?
The alpha plays, baby.
Oh, yes. The alpha plays. Yes. That's
so subtle. So subtle. That Brady double stack is definitely like the most attractive stack for me, even in the small or the large field, like with the 6 persons, just because it's easy to then like mix around that, and that combination has a good chance of like not burying you. And if there's one thing that I've learned through playing these in football and even as well as like baseball, just like giving yourself a shot and trying to hit ceilings at the other spots seems to be a pretty profitable way of approaching these. So like identifying, like, just because normally we don't think about high floors when we're playing for an up top prize, but giving yourself a floor to then rotate high risk, high variance guys, in my opinion, is the best way to like have a chance at first and stay profitable in these games, because that's ultimately what we want to do also, right? Is not lose money.
Yeah. I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. And there's, sometimes it's hard to rank the running backs, because I think like with that strategy, sometimes it's good to get, just a foundational base running back for the week. And then I feel like our ranks maybe have those mid-tier running backs ranked a little bit too high, because it's kind of hard to shift just the top of the position and not the rest of the position. But that sort of plays into, get your base, get your value up top, and then, getting unique in rounds 4 through 6, maybe even 3 through 6, sort of depending on which of the contests you're in.
Right. Yeah, definitely not done enough from what I can see, at least.
I want to talk a little more macro stuff here before we get into like this weekend slate specific. When you're let's start one overarching one of mean based versus median based projections. I think you did. I can't remember which ETR show it was recently. It was at the start of the season there, and you kind of walked through it. It might have been the props. when talking about how your guys' props model incorporates that, and how we could kind of apply that to chasing ceiling in GPP, like i.e. these formats.
Yeah, I do. One of the things on our ranks we don't have right now that I think I'm going to add in is actually our ceiling projections. We just have our base projection right now. So I'm going to add in our ceiling projections because that matters a little bit more. But yeah, in general, I mean, you have to visualize the range of outcomes on guys, and the median performances aren't going to win you the tournament anyways. Yet that's kind of what people kind of tend to focus on because that's how most projections are done, or even the mean projection. So the mean projection generally runs higher than the median projection because most of these guys are a bit more, right-tailed in terms of their distribution. They're having more games further away from their median up top than they are missing down low. But
Right.
So example, like Chris Godwin right now is a little bit lower in our ranks than he probably should be because his ceiling.
I mean, many are calling him an alpha play. I mean,
I gotta stop bringing up Chris Godwin. We're never alpha play. But like him versus Brandon Cooks, for example, we have Cooks ranked a little bit higher because Cooks's target share is so commanding for Houston. But Godwin, based on efficiency, the team pass rate, and the team total in particular, he has without even looking, I know for sure he has a higher ceiling in our projections than Cooks does. So I might actually start doing the ranks based purely off ceiling in the future instead of off just the average mean. But yeah, so we've got like a ceiling of like 19.3 for Godwin, and Cooks is 18.5. So even though Cooks has that,
just because peek behind the curtain, Brandon Cooks is ranked 36th and Godwin's ranked 42. So that's what I have from last night's poll.
Yeah.
So like just a peek behind the curtain that even though they're ranked differently, so if we were just plugging in this sheet, we're going to end up with a lot more Brandon Cooks, and it's why we can't just draft off these because of this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think I might switch it to ceiling because of the format of this being only 6 rounds and like it being a tournament. It probably makes more sense to do these ranks off ceiling. But it's new, so it's something we're still tweaking. But yeah, absolutely. That's one of a few examples of why you can't just draft off. And some of the other examples, I know you had on the sheet, not to jump the gun, but like how much projection to sacrifice to get like unique or correlation. But kind of starting, so like Josh Jacobs for Nez last week, you could almost back into that, just kind of see the guys with the ADP at 36, 35.8. And I was curious if you guys have noticed like how stark the difference is in terms of rostered rate between like a 35.8 ADP and the guys that just straight don't have an ADP at like 36.
That last week Herzig was on the show and he built an ADP model on the fly in Excel while we were talking to him, and then he is like, he's still paying attention and he's still corresponding with us, and then all of a sudden he just goes, hey, wait guys, I think I got something here, and just fires a full ADP model of basically on 1,000-person sample of what he expected those ADPs to be. And based on that kind of little experiment that we've then taken a little step further and messed around with in our own merit, we kind of figured it was a 33.6 ADP was about 40% owned.
Okay.
Yeah. But then it changed based on how he amended our interpretation of that player. If we thought that player was going at 27.5 some percentage of the time and then going undrafted other percentage of the time, we arrive at a different way to guess ownership, opposed to that person is a one-off back-end stack piece over and over again with Josh Allen. Right. Like Isaiah McKenzie probably had the same ADP as Josh Jacobs, yet they were rostered in very different ways last week.
Yeah, like Gabe Davis, I'm looking at this week, has a 34.5 ADP, and Allen's top in ADP. So Gabe's probably rostered at a much higher rate than some other guys at 34.5.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So still waiting on some. If we can get that in the future, it would be like tremendous for us to be able to analyze some of that stuff that we see. But for now, that this is what we've arrived at.
No, that's sharp. That's good. That also, so you said 40% at 33.6. Are the guys with straight 36 ADP just all undrafted then, or is it rounded? Do you know?
We don't know. We
Okay.
think it's rounded and we think they're being drafted. We know for certain from what Underdogs told us that this only applies to the 6 person contest. So the 12 entry contest ADPs are actually off of the 6 entry ADPs. So the deeper player pool of the 12-man drafts isn't impacting the ADP model. So
okay.
That being said, like the 36s, I just mean we'd end up with more players having ADPs, I guess, if we were taking the 12 data. Yeah.
Got it.
Mm-hmm. How would this is an interesting segue that I didn't say we'd talk about, but how would you go about solving the ownership? I don't know, projected ownership for a contest like this? Would it just be?
I'd just ask Herzig for his Excel sheet, probably.
I love it.
Us too. The path of least resistance.
You know? Yeah. Can I get that?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, seriously, he's probably yes. That's probably as good as you can get without. I'd have to spend some more time on it, but I'm assuming I wouldn't find something that's that much better than what he whipped up.
Yeah. So one thing I think is interesting is like we know that the max owned a player can be is 16%. Like the max ownership in these tournaments is 16% because it's like one person in every 6 out of every 6 teams entering this can take a player. So knowing that, like, does that affect like eating chalk differently for you if you were like playing these in volume? Since like you're not playing against a potential like 50% of the field, but only at max 16% of the field having the same guy as you on your teams, if that makes sense.
No, that definitely makes sense. It's, you're not going to get, a 50% TJ Hawkinson just shoving it down your throat. It's not going to happen.
TJ Hawkinson.
That's true. That's true.
And I think especially like at the top of the draft, you're not too worried about it. It also, I think, brings into play like unique combos a little bit more, knowing like each player's max 16%. Like sometimes I think the unique combo stuff gets like a little overdone in like off-season best ball. But I do think here the unique combo stuff, there's a little bit more merit to it. And part of the reason is that, both players are max 16%. If they're not being used together a lot, like you very easily can get some players that are, 1% together. I do still think, though, the guys that are like barely being drafted at all, to get those at 1% when they're like not that much worse, you're sacrificing a couple of points, and you're also sacrificing a couple of points in one spot, right? It's not like when I play Thunderdome, I'm sacrificing a couple points in like 9 spots because I don't want to be chalky anywhere.
Yeah.
And then that adds up. Whereas it's a 6-person contest, the variance is almost even higher. If you take the top projected players in rounds 1 through 3 or whatever to build around your core, I mean, you can get 3 off the board plays, maybe sacrifice like 8 points total, which sounds like a lot over just 3 spots, but it's really kind of one guy going off.
Yeah, because it's only a 36-person player pool, so the sacrifice you're making on a 12-game slate is like damn near negligible in some respects, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on how far you go, of course.
Yeah.
I try not to push it too hard into 6-mans.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, let's push the envelope there. That's a good segue, Leone. How far would you be willing to push it? Like, could we be drafting round 3 guys in round 1 and getting unique in that format and then taking 3 off the board? Or do you think that's even too extreme and unnecessary? We could just eat some, top 20 ADP through the first 3 rounds and then get weird with it after, or backstack. Like, should we doing one correlated low owned piece, or should we be getting even crazier with 2, 3, 4, whatever?
Yeah. So I'm still learning as I go along with this, so I want to just be transparent that I definitely
Well,
do
we
not
all
have
are.
this
That's
figured out.
yeah.
But my inclination is that it's fine to eat chalk up top. I do think there might be specific weeks, like I hate to keep harping on like Tampa Bay, Atlanta, but it just looks like so juicy for this contest where I could see being ahead of ADP on, Brady or Fournette or Evans, like around early, just to make sure you set up that game stack real effectively and that would work. Also, the other thing too is it based on so like we have Debo Samuel ranked really high this week.
I noticed that.
If you agreed with that ranking, it might be okay. So I guess there's two ways to look at it. It's like one's like, wow, I could get Debo in round 2, and that's gonna be an incredible value. The other is if I take Debo in round 1, I might get a unique combination. I probably side towards like eking out that value early in the beginning of the rounds and then getting unique elsewhere. And even with Debo, it's like DJ Moore doesn't really have an ADP this week. That's a one-off. I think once you hit round 4, you can really go pretty off the board the last 3 rounds, either correlated or unowned. Another spot that Herzig was telling me, I'm just stealing his ideas for the most part, that he likes to do though is like the high upside guys that are questionable early.
Yeah.
He'll take a lot of those guys and then build in his
now,
swap strategy.
That guy right now is Amon-Ra St. Brown and Alvin Kamara for this week right now. Both with Kamara's ADP has been pushing up a little bit, but both of their ADPs were mid 30s for a bit there.
Wow.
Yeah, and Swift too.
Swift right now still has he's just got listed as doubtful, but on Underdog he still has a Q tag, so you can use him as a punt spot, wait for the end of the week to get more information, and then set a low on running back that is in a good spot who went the majority of the week undrafted, like at the top of your swap queue. That was all Herzig. That was his idea.
That's super smart.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I was
let's stop crediting Herzig and start assuming these are our own original.
I'm not giving Herzig that one because you guys know I was doing that in the baseball streets early this summer. With the late swap. There we go. Come on.
What happened in baseball? Did it really happen though?
I brag about a baseball win. Everyone's like, whatever. Like, I don't even the place. Like,
okay, guys, come on. I can't win in the football streets. Give me some baseball credit.
You're up next, bro. You're up next.
Yeah, I gotcha.
No, that's and in general, it just seems like drafting later in the week, like it's such an information game that you might want to draft a couple early just to have your pulse on how things are working, or maybe you get like Kamara super cheap early, but if you draft late in the week, you've got more injury information, you've got more ADP information, and I mean these games seem like they're really plus EV. I definitely want to start playing them at a higher rate than I have been. My buddy, my neighbor, actually, like literally my next door neighbor, finished. What did he finish for? I think was 5K. He won 5K and he was close to something. So
that's a top.
He had he said no one played Marquise Brown. Like he had Marquise Brown and he was just, just smashing that week with Marquise Brown. And it's just like, and he had the correlation, Kyler Marquise Cup on that team. And it seems like you can do some things that we take for granted in DFS that no longer are as big of an edge in DFS because everyone does them and apply them here. And it actually is a pretty big edge, even though it's pretty highly variant.
Do you know his username by chance for that? Because I was in that same spot chasing, and the guy that was above me boxed me out with the Marquise Brown Cooper Cup combo in that main tournament.
Dude, can you imagine if it's Leone's neighbor?
Yeah, so I'm looking. It's SC. I don't know.
Schneid.
That's literally it. Yeah.
No way.
And that's what I was talking about in the Discord when I'm like, I was scavenging. Like sometimes these it's a little laggy with the way they come. With the scoring. So I just checked for 30 minutes and I'm like, I'm updating. I'm like, there's no combo that can, if I have, like, I can get first, I'm sold. And all of a sudden, like, I see I get bumped down a little bit and my winnings are down and I look and then all of a sudden I'm bumped down and there's a guy with a Cooper Cup Marquise Brown ahead of me. I'm like, oh, are you kidding?
Yep, that's
And it
so
was
funny.
yeah,
Oh,
and that was
man.
funny
My
because that was the same
That's
tournament.
so funny, man.
Nez was holding the 50K and then literally
Yeah,
lost
it was.
out.
Yeah,
So-
I don't know if you saw that, but that was Justin
That's funny.
Jefferson's like goose egg game, like 3 points, and I just needed him to put up 10, and I would have been.
Oh.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
got it
Karma made up for it. Karma was
got
looking
it
out for
back.
me. That
That
10K that I won though.
Josh
sorry, just real
Jacobs
quick.
alpha game.
Damn right. No, that lineup out just the Tybo and the like drafting late. That was my last draft of the day. That 10K team. So and the 12 mans. So just yeah, I'm in like Hawkinson was just like not being taken. It was weird. But sorry, John, go ahead.
No, I was gonna bring up two things there. I was gonna bring up that team being a Mac Hollins team and get Leone's thoughts on Mac Hollins kind of pushed his way into cash game chalk. This was week 4, week 3, week 4, week 3.
Yeah, week 4.
3, I believe.
Week
Three.
Week three.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Shoot, man.
And yeah, man,
It's
it's
all a
all
blur.
blending.
It's
yeah.
all
I
a
had week
blur.
5 already happened, and it was 2 weeks ago. and-
Yeah, right. Well, it has
Yeah,
happened.
right.
We've done the projections. Week 5 is over.
Yes.
we
We've
have
done
the
our work.
answers. We have the answers already. No, but that week 3, like Mac Hollins was cash game chalk in some respects. He was like probably like 30-40% owned, somewhere in that range. TJ Hawkinson last week, cash game chalk. Both of them were donk chalk in GPPs on DK, in my humble opinion. And then in our GPPs on Battle Royale, they were the best plays. So it's funny to see that trickle down of how the field maybe in the BRs isn't as dialed or isn't catching up to that. It's just an interesting note there from our strategy standpoint. Would you be looking into this, Leone, and being like, hey, man, these are good cash game plays for a reason. Let's just play them in the BR over here?
Yeah, I mean it's hard because obviously they're chalk because of the salary component,
Mhm.
and you don't have that over here. So in some ways, I think I'd just be ignoring what they are in DFS and kind of try and treat them as like individual entities for this own game, unless you think there's a chance that they're like under projected, and the fact that they're chalk in DFS, maybe there's some wisdom of the crowds that they should project better than they do. I could see that angle a little bit, but you know, if you're a coward and you want to hedge your DFS GPP lineups, you can do it.
Hey, maybe that's kind of I'm a
hedging?
former hedger. I'm done hedging because I've been told time and time again how like negative EV it is. But I like to just with the chalk DFS thing, like using the low salary almost as like a signal to say like, because they have a low salary, chances are they have a very low ADP and probably like aren't drafted, and they give you there's a potential for a floor there. And you know, people take studs all the times in these, and they just don't get you double digits, and at that point you're absolutely toast. So I think that there's something there to like getting chalk and then like giving yourself like just a bit of support there, at least in some of the experiences I've had in this.
Mm-hmm. If Mike, I know you're primarily a single entry. That's kind of like your forte, right? In the DFS streets.
Yeah, small
Yeah.
field, usually
Small field.
hand build. You know, a few like 5 teams a week or so.
Okay, yeah, I figured as much. But if you were playing this contest at volume, or let's say let's take both approaches. You're playing this contest at 150 max, or you're playing this contest at you're going to have 10 bullets. How would your strategy change between those two?
I guess if I was doing 150 bullets, I might, I'm probably rotating through different guys that I don't think are going to be owned enough and rotating through different stacks. And I'm treating it more like a season-long best ball portfolio where the idea is you're obviously going to have micro player takes. You're going to be overweight on certain players, but for the most part, it's kind of like if I just have a really smart structure over 150 teams, I'm going to do pretty well. And I think you could do that in the battle royale too. Like if every lineup has a little bit of correlation and has a couple of guys that aren't going to be played at the rate that they should be, you're probably setting yourself up for success. If you whittle it down to 10 teams, it's sort of the same idea, I guess, but I might iterate over like the same combinations, maybe a little bit more, and just be more condensed in the player pool if I think there's a particular edge with a specific stack or something.
Yeah, I think to make a specific example of that, last week between your guys' rankings, our takes, and whatever, we consolidated pretty exploitatively on Mark Andrews, right? And that was kind of like how we felt comfortable. And I didn't get to 150 because it's very time consuming, but I got to, I want to say 100 last week, 90, something like that. And I ended up with 43% Mark Andrews. Numi ended up with, what was it, Numi? 48, 51? 52, something.
52.
I played Mark Andrews in the dome, so we went down
we're all
together.
hey guys, we played the right plays. We can take it. We can pat ourselves on the back. No, but I just want to take. I want your take on how exploitative would you be willing to get? Like, is 50% owned of one player far too much for 150 entries in this contest, or is that fine?
I think it's kind of like, this might be a cop-out answer, but it's just an individual how you want to play. I don't think it's minus EV. Like, like people talk about this for best ball season long too. I think like I think my edge is in roster construction, so I don't want to be like crazy attached to like 3 players that could sink my portfolio over the whole season for off-season best ball. So that's why I don't have 50% a player in the Best Ball Mania 3, but it's not because I think that strategy is minus EV though. And a lot of times if I'm playing DFS for a week, the rare weeks I do MME, it's because I see a specific edge and I actually kind of want to go all in on that edge and then diversify around that. So I might, last week I almost went all in on, Philly Jacksonville stacks, and then I got squeamish on the weather and I pulled it back and I didn't do it. But what I would have done was 150 stacks and then just spread around that. So if you think Mark Andrews is completely undervalued, I don't think there's anything wrong with drafting him 50% and then having a bunch of unique combinations around that one specific edge. I guess for me, it always just comes down to like, where's our maximal edge, hitting that as strongly as possible, and then diversifying around that, because you don't want to, like, let's say play 50% Mark Andrews and then 50% Leonard Fournette, and then he ruins, if you don't feel as strongly about that particular player, but you're just drafting him because of your rankings list, like that's when it's an issue.
Yeah. I mean, some are calling that combinatorial ownership. I don't know.
I will say to piggyback on the rankings, like an easy way to you can have these rankings. You can even you don't have to necessarily set them in there, but just identifying where you have, like, you can just easily identify the values, and then you can wait on them, but then you at least know that where their ADP are going, where they're ranked. So that's just an easy way, like, again, to harp on you don't want to just go straight off ranks, but you can go and see, like, okay, they have them, like, Justin Jefferson is ranked 8, yet he's the second wide receiver. Like, that's not to say to have no Justin Jefferson or anything, but like, you can get, like, Debo is your fourth ranked player. Like, I'm consistently getting Debo in the 3rd round. So like, like, and that's like it to go, like, I think John's touched on it before. Like, you don't go and take the guy that you can get at a value in the 1st. You can to get that combos. Like, I have done that. And like you said, like, you get that unique combo, but if you're getting them consistently in the 3rd, and then that goes with like the running backs, like there's so much consolidated, just top plays on your rankings that are up there. That doesn't mean you have to take them there, but that means you can see that they're rarely being drafted. And if you can just start taking those guys over and over again, rather than continually touching Nick Chubb and Austin Eckler, just foregoing those guys, like, that's an easy way to go off ranks. And like, I mean, that's just kind of what I do in general when I have my own projection rankings. So
yeah, no, I think that makes a ton of sense. And essentially the rankings, like you said, they like help you identify the correct strategy. The strategy isn't to just pick off the rankings one by one. It's to find the guys who aren't going to be drafted, who are close enough and should be drafted. And then, like you said, to also find the great ADP values and figure out where you can get them. Like the Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook thing too. It's like, if Jefferson's going to be really highly drafted and we have him and Dalvin close together, like that's an edge point where I might want to be really heavy Dalvin Cook and just fade Justin Jefferson for this week. Not that our projections are overly precise, but if the market doesn't reflect that, you're kind of just like free rolling that's ends up being the correct game script or whatever.
Yeah,
I think
that's perfect. Yeah, no, that just goes into point with all of the points that we've made before with, like, again, I'll harp on it, the AJ Brown going in the top 5 and Devonta Smith not being drafted at all. Like, just in that draft, I had a couple AJ Brown, but I told the guy, I'm like, I'm going all in Devonta Smith, and that's when he ended up going. So it's like those strategies, just seeing like if they're that close in ranking, but there's that big of a discrepancy, you can find where you get your leverage instantly.
Yeah, just something for the audience to think about for sure.
I really like the Jefferson Dalvin shout because peek behind the paywall, you guys have them one spot apart this week, but their ADPs are like 20, or they were to start the week. Now they're like 15.
Yep.
So, but one thing I want to ask about that is something that we talk about so much in DFS because the field's gotten so sharp and it's pushed so away. We talk about these correlation patterns where we probably don't want Dalvin and Justin Jefferson on the same team. We instantly find a way to kind of get unique in doing so, and having 2 high dollar priced players with slight negative correlation from the same team in the same build. Do you think it's necessary in these BR contests to be embracing that kind of variance yet?
Wait, can you say that again? So I don't think.
Okay. No, I mean, like, I think generally speaking, we fade like the negative correlation of same team running back and wide receiver.
So I do think that it's okay to take on those negative correlations if they make sense price wise. Like in this specific example, it seems like Jefferson's going too early, and it might make more sense to fade and play like the Alpha Dalvin game. But going to like the unique combination stuff, and also with just the 6-man rosters, and the amount of variance, like I think if Minnesota puts up 30 plus points against Chicago, those guys can easily do I think we overweight. You see this in I think of it like in Showdown. People have gotten better at this, but historically in Showdown, people way too much avoided negative correlations when on a specific game, like that doesn't mean they can't both do well together. It just means over time. I'm probably not articulating this quite the way I want to, but
you're spot on. Like,
but it's especially if they're both good values already. I would say like there's room for one guy to maybe not hit his absolute ceiling because the other guy does, and then both to still work out correctly. And again, it might come down to the contest size a little bit, where if you want to be perfect, you might avoid those negative correlations. But again, we're just playing one slate, and sometimes there's a chance you don't need the absolute perfect lineup to win. Or we saw, what was it? I feel like it was like Miles Sanders a couple weeks ago with, maybe it was Sanders and Devon, or maybe I'm mixing up that week, but there's definitely been instances where running back, wide receiver, the offense just rolls. And if this slate kind of sucks,
the Lions last week.
Yeah, I mean, both sides of that game. I mean, Metcalf and Penny, and
hardly anybody had Penny.
Hawk and Jamal. Yeah, so I do think the negative correlations actually, if people are actively avoiding them, like it's a really good way to get unique. It's hard because we don't know the exact combinatorial ownership.
Another word.
Tell me more, Leone. Tell me more.
Another word I think we need to add to the brand is porting. We're always porting DFS knowledge into this. I think that's next up on the docket. And because
we got a swear jar. We got a swear jar for me right now, and I'm just losing money on these words.
Because you can
a bingo card. You guys are gonna have to have. We do establish a millie. We do a Thanksgiving drinking version. You guys are gonna have to do a Thanksgiving drinking version for the Turkey Day Battle Royale.
Don't twist our rubber arms.
Up here in Canada, it's Thanksgiving this weekend.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
So I might, it's what is it? It's 8:41 a.m. I might crack one. Why not?
Let's get it, man. No, but like you said, this is like a little anecdotal, but the DFS and the Showdown field, I feel like has gotten like very sharp over the last couple of years, where like they're not afraid to play those negative correlations. Where like anecdotally, if I was to ask my buddies in my home league, like they still don't want T. Higgins and Jamar Chase on the same team. You know, like and that's like how people I think are playing this BR contest, like they don't want, like they're trying to hit the 6-leg parlay so badly where you may miss a game environment that's really spicy. Like for example, we keep talking about Tampa Bay, and right now whenever I'm drafting that, like that's been like my first like stack that I'm targeting in my first 10 or so drafts. I haven't gotten a lot of Lenny Fournette, and I see that like you guys are high on him, and maybe I'm just like overly spooked about Rachaad White kind of like creating himself a bit of a role. But yeah, he definitely seems like somebody that it can like have like that quintessential Lenny game, and he's not being taken that high like compared to the ranks.
Yeah, just more Tampa Bay Atlanta iterations. Brady, Fournette.
There you go.
It can't help.
People don't play him together, which
Right.
they should, because like Fournette's ceiling we kind of saw last game, even with White playing, he's better when they throw a lot. Like that's when he gets the high value touches.
Exactly.
Yeah, like we don't really care that he got 3 carries last week. Look at all the targets and receptions, right?
Yeah.
And I mean that wasn't even a ceiling outcome for him. I want to ask one more macro level question, and then let's dive into 1 or 2 drafts together here and talk through some of this slate on the fly kind of thing. But just seeing the growth of ETR and ETR associated with DFS and the way that the props, basically the props Discord moves markets and stuff like that, has ETR now become such a beast that you guys genuinely move markets and you have to kind of find spots of leverage against your own projections?
It's an interesting dynamic. The prop stuff is still just wild to me that like major sports books, I can put a note in Discord and a line is like gone in 10 seconds. Like it's just, it just blows my mind. And Taylor, our CEO, has always kind of said like, you know, we have more influence than you guys think. And I was always kind of like, yeah, sure we do. And then you kind of see it. I think, especially in sometimes some of the niche stuff, you see it. You know, the NBA best ball, a lot of times the ADPs start to converge towards our stuff because there's not a lot out there, you know. It's hard for DFS at times. Like there's weeks like weeks 1 and 2, I feel like the guys I was on still nobody played. And then like last week was just an utter disaster at lock. I was like, oh my God, 35% Rashad. Like my spreadsheet like that I did had Rashad Penny with when I put in the actual ownership, had him as the worst GPP play on the slate.
Oh no!
Yeah. Like because
I played him.
It's an ownership play. I played. I mean, the result was amazing. The ceiling was there, but and it depended by contest. Like he was fine in like the milli, but like in the juke he was legitimately 35%. It's like this
crazy.
Shit is bananas.
Yeah.
So it's hard because like the last thing we ever want to do is like mislead subscribers. So we're not. You know, leveraging, and that's why I'm glad Wiggins and I do wake and rake on Sunday mornings. Because if if I put out a flag plant on Establish a Milli on Saturday and I can see it getting steamed up, like we can adjust expectations for our subscribers on Sunday morning, like where I'm moving. It is also hard to work on projections all week long, just to be like, well, this guy projects well, so we can't play him in GPP.
Right.
Like, you spend all this time to figure out who the best play is, just to not play the best play.
to build Levitan's cash lineup.
That's the mind pretzel that I have with myself. Like every week, I'm like, God, I want I have these guys I want to play, and I'm like, I can't. Like, you just gotta like put them to the side and be like, I'm sorry. Like if you do well, like that's great, but I can't play it. I just can't.
So it's difficult, but I think the big thing is just like trying to react to the public sentiment, and sometimes we get a good grasp on it. Some weeks like last week, you know, it took us by surprise a little bit what the ownerships were in contest. That was probably one of our worst weeks ever in terms of projecting ownership, at least for the small field stuff. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely difficult to in some ways bet against your own projections, but hopefully we're relaying this stuff to subscribers enough that they're still able to use the information instructively and not be confused when they see one of my lineups that doesn't have TJ Hawkinson in it.
Well, it's very interesting because I'm thinking about it through the lens of these BR contests, and there's just not a lot out there, let alone quality paid behind the paywall stuff like you guys are producing. So to see you guys have ranks for this, I'm also thinking, well, does everybody just have this CSV preloaded? Like now, you know, thinking through it, the hardos are all playing off the same ranks now. So now do I have to be, okay, you have Debo this week and Henry pushed up and Fournette pushed up. Well, now am I supposed to be trying to find a fade in there because, you know,
Right.
or is that too galaxy brain for a contest like this already, right?
I think right now, at least, I don't think our ranks for this are being used that much. And I think so many casuals play these battle royale contests that it's not as bad. But a lot of this circles back to what, you know, Shane and we were talking about, like people aren't using the rankings correctly is one of the biggest edges too. You know, if people are taking Debo 5th overall when they can take him in the 3rd round, you know, there's an edge for you in just kind of letting some do that necessarily, you know. But I think like the ADP rank differentials right now are wide enough that it doesn't seem like they're being used too much. Did we lose Nez to another fire alarm?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, something like that probably. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, no. Okay, let's. Yeah, we've hit on all this macro stuff. We've talked about the projections. Let's go a little this week. Hand in the dirt games that we like. You've harped on the Atlanta one. Let's do. We got about 15 minutes here. I promise I wouldn't take more than an hour of your time. Let's see. We could probably jump in 2 drafts right here and just talk through it on the fly. But if there's any game environment that's sticking out to you outside of, we've obviously hit on the Bucks Atlanta one. Is there another one that's kind of jumping off the sheet for you right now, Leone?
I mean, if you get the first pick and you take Allen, if you mess around with the later rounds, you can kind of take Gabe Davis and Deontay Johnson, which I don't think people have that together. It's kind of like they're choosing one or the other as their stack filler. I did mention like DJ Moore and Brandon Ayuk is a correlation that like absolutely no one is playing. So I'm just thinking of some of the stuff that sticks out. Mostert and James Conner kind of seem like decent like running backs. There's a few running backs that just really aren't being played that look like they don't project.
It's funny when Karain came on the show early this year, I think it was week 2 or something like that on a Friday, and we talked through his walkthrough, and he's like, man, Leone will just hit me up on Friday and he'll just tell me these gross ass running backs that I want no part of. And you just come on here and you just go James Conner and Raheem Mostert. I'm like, oh God, Leone, come on, man.
The gross running backs. Hey,
I'm looking for the alpha plays, man.
Back.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're alpha plays in retrospect. But yeah, no, I mean, trust me, I get it. It doesn't feel great, but
it's the point.
Yeah, that's the point. That is the point. Yeah.
There's probably some though that, I mean, looking like even further up our list. I mean, you already hit on the Alvin Kamara stuff changing, but like if you want to get a little less gross, like Damian Harris against Detroit, like there's a pretty high ceiling there. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I was gonna say Herbert too. That's where you could do the negative correlation people are afraid of, right? The Dalvin Herbert.
Oh thing. Yeah, okay. Yep.
Yeah, I kind of like that just because everything we've seen, the Bears will not throw the ball with a gun to their head. Like they just refuse. Like it's and Herbert, I think everyone agrees looks pretty damn spry.
Yeah, I have all of what we've been talking about. I have 2 Jefferson Cook already and Herbert Cook because Dalvin Cook's been falling to the last round in all of these drafts.
That's crazy.
So it's like
crazy. Okay, hey, we're on the clock here. Yeah. Who do we like here? Allen and Cup went off the board there. Where do your eyes go, Leone?
I think I might just like go chalky Jalen Hurts and figure it out.
Love it.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, and the thing about Hurts and Allen, especially in this format, is we know they're 100% owned, but that also means we can find ways to get unique elsewhere, which introduces like some fun either backstacks or it introduces some fun naked builds because everybody's thinking that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about gross ass James Conner, so we can take him in the last round.
I thought we were just kidding. I thought that was just for the bit.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit that way.
No, see, I tricked you guys by not bringing up James Conner when we selected Jalen Hurts and then dropping that after. But yeah, there's just so many ways. Like you don't got to get too crazy early. Also at quarterback, Like that's the thing I was thinking. Is like if you get
Oh,
shut out,
Bridgewater at 106. Ooh, what is going
Whoa.
on here?
Somebody was
This
watching
is-
our draft with Pete.
No,
Yeah,
someone
we
is.
built a.
This is the peak casual right there. That
Yeah,
is. Yeah,
I mean,
that is hilarious.
he's logging
He's
in the
watching the wrong
stack.
stream right now.
I guess. So
Yeah.
after we make this pick here, Leone, I'm kind of curious if you have any like takes on the defenses in the NFL this year. But let's go ahead and
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd probably just take AJ Brown here.
Yeah,
Right.
and just stack it up. Yeah.
Well, how do you feel? So I've done a Hurts Miles Sanders, and I do just weird stuff
Okay.
because I think of things like you pointed out with instantly no one wants to click it. Nez talked about his home league. The people still don't want to have T Higgins and Jamar Chase. Like they just instantly things that I don't want to click. I identify as like if I don't want to click it, the super casual definitely doesn't want to click it, and they're going to do something else. So it's like I know that's negative correlation, but who's to say that the Eagles don't just stomp them and they can both get home? You know what I mean? And then you have you don't go too different in the rest of your lineup, basically.
Yeah, I mean it's still in play for us, right? Like,
Mhm.
I mean Miles Sanders with the ADP is like 29. So, and again, I mean we saw last week one game did hit everything. Even though it is like a little bit larger field, I'm okay being pretty heavy on a game.
You like that?
Yeah, I like the Dalvin play.
Yeah, me too. I really like him this week.
Throw
I've
him in
been
there.
one thing I've been doing a lot this week is the 2-3 turn when it's there going Debo McCaffrey or going McCaffrey and then Kittle in the 4th or the 5th because I think tight end's pretty thin this week. Just thinking out loud, is there any interest there in that line of thinking, Leone, or is that?
Yeah, I mean the San Francisco Carolina game seems. I mean it's hard
Gross.
because it feels so gross, but
Right.
it really feels like that's baked into how people are drafting. So
It definitely is. So do you have like the Panthers defense has been getting a little bit of like praise lately? Like you know, they're a young, like could be pretty talented defense. Is that do you have, obviously it doesn't seem like you have any concerns about that. And I know that we should largely ignore how we feel about defenses when drafting for fantasy, but is there any team that you kind of like trump that rule for? Like the Eagles, for instance, who have looked like so dominant on defense?
Again, it's kind of depends what the market's doing. Like if the market's overly
Gotcha.
assuming that stuff, I'm fine just fading it. And most of that, I feel somewhat comfortable that it's built into
Okay,
our
here we're
projections.
Gotcha.
we're clock again. We already got quarterback taken care of.
We could do. I mean, is Hawkinson Harris? Is that like unique enough? Is like Hawkinson?
Oh, it's very unique.
That's
Harris,
very
Harris.
unique. That's a great call.
And if we get frozen out of that too, we can also fall back on Ramondre. It's not as sexy, but like giving ourselves outs at being frozen out of that.
Yep.
35 ADP. I've only taken him once this week, but that being said, I've only done 15 of these. I'm nowhere near where I'm normally at. We've been content bros this week. I don't know if you've heard.
We've got a pretty sick boots on the ground badge brigade report regarding Jalen Hurts and his exposure. So from Chad saying that Hurts has been stacked 19 out of 26 times, but he's only seen the Miles Sanders stack once, and that was with Devontae. So with the onslaught.
This Dalvin pick kind of screwed us up though because we're boxed into just one more running back, right?
Yeah,
Max, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we can't really do Miles and Damian.
We could,
and I think that's okay in this contest, not doing the full.
Is Marquise too chalky with this, or
not if we go with Harris? I don't think.
Yeah.
Should we do Marquise and then get the New England running back?
Yeah, Harris instantly gives this a unique texture.
Yeah.
No one is clicking him. I mean,
is Herbert still there too?
He just or Khalil actually. I'm not sure. I did not see that.
Herbert's still there as well.
Okay, so we got
outs.
a few options.
We got a lot of outs, yeah. And this is that's a perfect like to not boxing yourself out right away. Because like the tough thing is when you get those alpha wide receivers sitting there and it's like you draft Cooper Kupp 101 and all of a sudden you're like, well, look at these AJ Brown and it's the Devontae Adams type slate. It's like, well, I'm gonna click, you know what I mean? It's like all of a sudden you're like, well, now I have to fill out my roster in these last 3 rounds. It's like that's the toughest thing for me. It's like to not click that and figure it out differently.
Leone, you got to dodge him at the bottom there, dude. You gotta,
Yeah.
Hey, there we go. There's been our running shtick right now is
Hold
with
up.
the overlays.
Do we want
because,
Herbert or Harris? I kind of like
Um,
the Herbert a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's super. Yeah. I don't think
you guys have
anyone's
Herbert
talked.
5 spots above as well, so
And
I
definitely not a pairing I think we're going to see a lot in this contest at all.
Yeah, I like that, and
And
Yeah.
I like
fun.
that a lot because if you're
Fun
looking
one.
for those running backs, like you're looking for guys that can rip off those big plays, and that's Dalvin Cook.
Mhm.
And then that's I'm pretty sure if anyone was watching, no, you probably weren't. It was early in the morning, but
Hey, hold
that
on one
Saints
sec,
game.
Yumi. Hold on one
Yeah.
sec. Leone, you got time for one more?
Yeah,
About 7 minutes? Okay, cool. Beautiful.
I did have one question for you guys.
Mhm.
But like, if you hadn't taken a quarterback already, I'm assuming like someone taking Teddy that early would also shift what you're doing at quarterback, because
Yes.
Yeah.
there's like Herbert's number 5, right? So
Mhm.
you can kind of back into just waiting. Like the scarcity of the position is automatically changed drastically with someone taking an
Right. Yeah. If you
off-the-board
go
quarterback.
purple, we can see, John, like the
Oh, yeah, sorry.
quarterbacks
I think
listed by
Herbert's
ADP,
moved up some
and
spots. That's
and get like
Yeah, but if you just say like Allen Hurts, Herbert, Brady, Kyler is a
Yeah.
tier,
Mhm.
it's totally changed.
it is like the only tier right now in drafts. Like that's the
Yeah.
only other time I've seen Teddy get drafted other than us on stream was that one right there. Otherwise, it's very concentrated right now.
Mhm.
I've just been
Yeah, we took-
concentrating my ownership on Kirk. No one's taking Kirk.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. We got Willis in this one. There we go.
Yo,
Kirk
No,
with
what's that?
Dalvin too is a fun thing too. I don't know.
What's the Kyle Pitts ADP? That looks just fucking insane, to
Dude, it's
me.
bad.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
33.6.
this is insane. We need to set up a Atlanta Tampa Bay.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yes.
Haven't you heard Kyle Pitts is dead? They do not use him, and the Twitter and the entire market said that he is no longer good. So I don't know if we can do it.
That's
Okay, let's see.
insane.
Chad's
Right?
been manually tracking all this data and
Oh wow.
like through his own drafts. I mean, granted, it's small sample because you only get 150 drafts out of 56,000 entries or whatever. It's less than a fraction of a percent, right? But it's still interesting to
Chad.
think about.
That's
But
what I
he's
wonder though with
talking-
like the ADPs. Like I
Mhm.
think it starts to tell quite a bit. Like the differences between like 35 and 35.8 might be kind of extreme.
Do we want to flip this build right here and just go straight for this, or do we want to get someone first?
I don't hate setting us up for it, but you could also add Diggs to this and like holy
Okay.
shit, now we've got like
Okay.
a Diggs Brady's like
Okay, let's do that then.
in there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've
it
got lots of
introduces-
backups if Evans goes for some reason. We have
Mhm.
plenty of.
No, I like it. That actually, thinking that through and based on the projections that we have here and whatnot, be interesting if we had taken Samuel there over Diggs, just based on your guys' current projections there, and started with a Samuel Evans because that's not going to be high owned. Anyways,
Let's go Evans.
I just feel so
Okay.
strongly about Diggs against the Steelers this week, like with the injuries to the wide receiving core. Like the Steelers can't really stop alpha wideouts. That's just not what they can't really stop any alpha player on their team. And I could see them getting steamrolled.
Yeah.
One thing for you guys too. So in a build like this, how risky will you get in your 3rd round pick? Like, will you take Fournette over Brady to kind of set up something really unique, and then if you get screwed on it, you get screwed on it, or will you be a little bit safer and make sure you get Brady?
I think it's relative to the game stack which you're building and how many quarterbacks have been taken behind. Like I always bring up this page and just look through, player availability on the other side. I think if one of these quarterbacks at the front end of the draft had fallen over here, I would get risky and take Fournette here and just hope the other person didn't pick off Brady. I think in the instance where both players don't have a quarterback, I would lean to the safety of taking Brady, building out that game stack, and then hoping Fournette comes back, basically because this guy can't take a running back. So we're just waiting to make sure Paul doesn't take Fournette.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fournette
I-
goes.
I-
So
The guy already took Fournette like 3 picks ago.
yeah.
Okay, sure. Yeah. But just from a hypothetical.
Mhm.
Yeah, and to your Pitts point, like the recency bias hits harder, like so hard in these drafts. Like
Mhm.
it's absolutely crazy from a week to week basis. Basically, what coming in, it's like you just know if a guy went off, he's going to be pretty much up there in ADP to start, and then if he didn't and he's struggling, you can get him for free.
Well, it was
Yeah.
like Devontae Smith last week. Okay.
Yep,
What do you like
yep.
here?
I'd
Leone?
take Brady and just lock
I'm
it
with
in.
you.
I think.
Okay, sounds
Because
good
I
to me.
think we only have so many picks too that it's like if we want Godwin, Pitts,
And
that
Pitts,
only
yeah,
leaves us.
that's where I was.
So it's
Yeah. So I gotta run. I gotta take my dog over to the in-laws. But Leone, thanks for coming on, man. It's great
Yeah,
chopping up with you. And
congrats.
hopefully, yeah, thank you, dude. Appreciate it. Hopefully this team can we can split this 50K on Sunday.
Let's go.
Okay, so I'd go Godwin first and get the double because we have
Mhm.
London as a backup too.
We don't have London because we'll be at 3 wide receivers. So if we want to lock
okay, so
run
maybe
back,
we should.
And one of those guys has 3 wideouts, so he's locked from taking at least. So there's only 4 spots we have to sweat.
Okay, so let's take Pitts.
Okay.
They don't have any tight ends. It looks like.
yeah, no tight ends
Gross.
behind us, and yeah, that's where just bringing back the point where we were talking about the Brady thing is boom, we see 2 quarterbacks go, that whole tier just disappears. So glad we took Brady there, like being results oriented,
Yep.
but then also just thinking through the board where we bring up Numi brings up the good point that hey, we only have to fade this guy double tapping wide receiver on this end, and what are the chances he scrolls down to Godwin given this build, right? Especially when he already has Fournette.
One double tight end for this week. Like if you took Pitts and Kittle, the guys people are sick of, they do have
Mhm.
legitimately the ceilings, requisite to.
Yeah,
like
that's a good
that.
call.
I like that.
Both 30-point ceiling guys that are quote unquote gross now that are available in the 5th and 6th.
Yeah, it's not going to be for us here, but
Mhm.
since we do get, I think we take the double, right? And then we
we take Godwin.
And then we worry about it after. Yeah, especially when this guy on the end he appears to be a recreational
back, so
player
we'll
and
get
doesn't have a
one.
wide receiver yet. Yeah.
sorry.
So only one more running back can get taken before coming back to us here. So we could go completely uncorrelated, or that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I was looking at that. There's also the Kamara because we could swap into Najee.
Yeah. That's a good point because he's forced into quarterback. He could take a running back. That's about it. So we basically only have to fade one more running back if it's swapped. You get what I'm saying? So he just has to not take Najee, basically. So if we do that, and then our out is Najee.
And you still have Miles Sanders there too, technically.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah.
There's a few.
And
there's
Damon
really
Pierce. So you have options that it's not like terrible. It's not like gross if you can't, if he does take it.
And that's where the early ADP on Kamara and the projection gap difference to me is worth sacrificing the correlation.
Okay. Yeah, I like that call. Yeah, because you guys have him at
he goes Kittle anyway, so
yeah. You guys have him at 19, and I did not control F where Najee was. But I don't.
We have him down a decent bit.
Yeah. Fryer moved ahead.
We've got like a 4-point projection gap on those 2 players. So
okay, yeah.
Well, we've got a pretty highly projected team. I guess
Najee's 71 in your ranks.
71. Okay. Yeah, interesting. No, it's going to be a constant debate and conversation topic about how unique we have to get in these, what the optimal build patterns look. And we only have 5 weeks sample of contests. I basically threw out all of last year's because they were only 5K person tournaments and that sort of thing. Like these are completely different beasts. Like we're talking about having a puppy every single week, right? So yeah, it's interesting. But man, this has been invaluable. Mike, like this has been great.
man. Thank you so much.
Really appreciate you doing this. You're welcome back anytime. Hope we ship that 50 dimes, and you have to come back on Monday for the winner's circle. We got the winner's circle coming on Mondays, where the winner is always invited on Monday mornings. And we got some new overlays. You could be the first face in the overlay with one of these teams. Yeah.
Let's get it done.
Yeah, no, this was great, man. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day. Love your ranks. Love everything you put out at ETR. People like, subscribe, follow. If you're not following Mike, you're obviously following Mike, but at 2hats1mike on the Twitterverse there, and go read all his content on ETR because it's truly some of the best out there, period. Anything to add, gentlemen?
I just want, thanks for having me on. I feel like I learned so much chatting it up with you guys, and I'm gonna go and draft some more teams now. I've got the bug for the week.
So. They're addicting.
They're fun as hell.
Once you do a couple, it's like, well, I can do a couple. They go so quick. So yeah.
And you bang a couple out, and you're like, ooh, I was so close to that last combo that I wanted. I got to chase that dragon. I got to get another one. Underdog just gives you a taste, right? Just gives you a little taste, and then you keep rolling with it. Yeah, you can do some. Put on your light up vest, go for a jog, and do some on your phone, right?
Oh yeah. We'll get Underdog Cardio Club. Let's go.
Let's go. All right. Appreciate you so much, Mike, and everybody's favorite. Oh, actually, I'll plug one more thing. We got friend of the show, another ETR, the Showdown King, coming on to talk some Thursday night football, the single game slate. Cody Main's coming. So this is a huge day for us. We're dipping in all the ETR talent and dragging them over here for a bit. So stay tuned for that. It's 4 p.m. Eastern. We'll be back. And everybody's favorite time of the show, the end.